So good evening, everyone, and thank you for being with us. Once again, welcome back after another week. Before we proceed, you may have heard this already, but I'm going to mention this again, and I'm sure Stephen will mention it too. A gentle reminder to send us your photos on chairman@mpsmalta.com and photoscopomolta@gmail.com. Please photos to reach us by the 15th of February so that we can organize accordingly. I also wanted to thank those who on behalf of Patrick Nella Spiteri. I want to thank those who attended the last photo shoot, Valentine's. It was last Sunday. It was really good. I am informed that around 8 photographers showed interest to participate. Actually, they went to participate in this event. So thank you on behalf of Patrick. He sent his thanks as well. In fact, I want to also let you know, it's briefly, Patrick Nella Spiteri are working on a workshop on boudoir and some other themes related to boudoir. The details are not yet finalized, but once they are finalized, obviously I will be sharing it with you over here so that you would know all the details. They are still working on this second workshop because there was already a workshop done by Patrick Nellas. So today we will be having with us Johan Siggesson. I'm sure many of you know Johan. I'll give you, for those who may not be that familiar with Johan, I'm going to give you a short introduction about Johan. Johan is a wildlife photographer originally from Sweden but residing in Malta since 2002. Already as a young boy, he was passionate about animals and the natural world. Before Animal Planet, Nat Geo Wild and the likes, he sat glued in front of the weekly nature program on Swedish state television. After a safari a few years back, he decided it was time to take up wildlife photography full-time. He also teaches photography courses and acts as a guide on photography tours around the world. Over the years, Johan has received a number of international awards in international competitions such as European Wildlife Photographer of the Year, Travel Photographer of the Year, and he was titled Scottish Nature Photographer of the Year 2014. Johan's fascination with the world around him, together with a keen interest in graphic design, have steered his imaginary away from the classical and depictive wildlife photography towards a more artistic and experimental approach to the journey. I will now say a couple of thanks as usual. Thank you to Stephen Bohajar for his support. As usual, we really work closely together and obviously to put up these webinars and discuss initiatives together. So thank you, Stephen. Joseph Mifsud, thank you, our technical guru, for streaming our webinars live on the MPS Facebook page. I also want to thank him because he's become even my personal technical guru as well. Yesterday we were talking about something, he was helping me with something. The MPS Exco for your ongoing support, thank you indeed. And also the Facebook groups for supporting us by promoting our webinars on their pages, namely by surname order, Tony Azzopardi from Fotografija Bejn il-Ħbieb, Johan De Bono from All Photography, and Alexander Kutajjar from Photography Shots. I will now hand over the word to the President of the Malta Photographic Society, Mr. Stephen Bohajar, to share with us some news regarding the society. Over to you, Stephen.
Thanks, Vince. I think there's some people who need to join us for today. Good evening, dear fellows of the Malta Photographic Society. First of all, as Vince said, I would like to thank Mr. Johan Siggesson, who is also a member of our beloved society, who accepted our invitation to share with us his amazing and rewarding experiences at the Kalahari Desert. I am sure that Johan is going to give us a taste of what one expects to see in the Kalahari Desert. timeless solitude, endless blue skies, red sand dunes covered with sparse, grassy vegetation, dry open riverbeds with towering camel thorns, and abundant and varied wildlife. Those who are compassionate to wildlife, semi-desert colors, and nature will surely love today's webinar. But may I point out that although not everyone can make it to such places, maybe because, like me, are afraid to travel outside Europe, we have to listen carefully and understand how a photographer comes in touch and gets related to the subject he is photographing. The value of having different artists to share with us their photography is immense. I feel privileged to listen to photographers like Theodore Kefalopoulos and Damien McKillicuddy, who in these past weeks gave us a sample of their expertise in their field of photography. We as photographers have to become motivated and get inspired from works of others. Some may argue that it is expensive to own such camera equipment or own a studio with high-end stuff. Yes, maybe it's true, but we must also know that the photographer is an artist who puts theory into practice, who study how to interpret light and use his equipment accordingly. As artists, we need to implement what we hear or see to our own photography. It shouldn't be a matter of copying, but rather an inception of ideas and concepts that help us grow artistically and become more mature in the field. I do not own a studio and I'm not in possession of Elinchrom lights. All I have are 2 flash guns and a number of different continuous lights. But I study how others work with light. And if I want to do some tabletop photography, as I'm not into portrait photography, I use the same approach. Today, Johan is going to speak about his photographic adventure in Kalahari. I wish to visit such a place, but I'm afraid of going long trips and don't feel comfortable to stay in a tent. Okay, it remains a dream, but I can learn a lot from his professionalism in the field. I can get inspired by his techniques and his creative works. And by the way, he plans his holiday and his subject. We get to learn from the best. Yes, I agree that the gear is very important, but as Marius Viet said, your most important gear is your eye, your heart, and your soul. I will pass on the floor to Mr. Siggesson to start today's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm going to open Johan's mic. In the meantime, anyone who has any questions may write to me on the chat and I will coordinate with Johan accordingly. During the webinar, you might see a pop-up with a poll. If so, we kindly ask you to participate so that we can create a discussion. Without further ado, over to you, Johan.
Thank you. Yeah, so I have to share the screen first here, right?
Yes, you can share the screen, Johan.
So let's see. Let's see.
Johan, you need to share the sound.
Yeah, I did. I did that.
Maybe can you start it again, please?
Okay.
Maybe Johan, try to unshare and then you share it again.
Yeah. So share screen.
Yeah, and switch on
share sound is
yeah.
Tick the box, yes.
Yeah. And share. Let's see.
Yes, that's it. Very good.
Okay. Okay now. Do you see the full picture or do you see my
yes, we see the picture. No, we don't see the notes. But there is no sound yet, right?
No sound now.
Okay, okay, very
small
good.
some film clips later on. There should be
Yes,
some sound.
yes, very good, very good. No worries.
All right. So first of all, thank you for having me. It would be a pleasure. There was a lot of people I saw, 30, 40 people or something like that. It's quite good.
Yes, that's right, 33.
Yeah. So first of all, some of you might know who I am. Most of you probably don't. So first of all, just a little bit about myself. I'm from Sweden, and I've lived here since 2002. And I work as a wildlife photographer, professional wildlife photographer. That basically means that my main income is from photography. I don't have another job, and trying to make do. So as Steven said, I think it was, or Vince, I don't remember now, I guide on photography tours to Africa and to Japan and some other trips I've been doing. I run courses once in a while, but my main income is from selling prints. Hopefully I have 2 books in the process, one with a local theme, and one about the Kalahari. So what we will see during this presentation is mainly, not only, but mainly documentary imagery. But my prints, which I sell, are more on a different sort of style, with more artistic or graphic or painterly, or whatever you want to call it, abstracts and so on. So if you're interested in that, you can head to my store online if you're interested in that, where you can see more of these images and so on. But enough about that. So first, Kalahari. Kalahari, for many of you maybe haven't even heard about Kalahari before, but Kalahari is a desert in the southern Africa. And first I would like to show a small film, which is just put together with some film clips from my iPhone when I'm out. So it's nothing, it's not any award-winning imagery, but you get a feel for what's going on and how it looks a bit and so on. So it should be coming here. Let's see. You should be hearing sound now.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was a short introduction to what we see and how it looks in this place. First of all, I'm going to just talk about gear, because there's always someone who's interested in what we are using. We photograph from vehicles, so we are not allowed to get out of the vehicles at any point. There are some dedicated, they call it picnic spots, where you are allowed to get out to have something to eat, and there is also in some places there are toilets. So we photograph from vehicles. So one of the most important gear that we have is our vehicle, which we have used. This is what are they called? The ones that's running on Maltese roads all the time. Range Rovers or Land Rovers. Sorry, Land Rovers. We gave up on those some time ago, and now we're using 4x4s Toyota Hilux. They are obviously very important because the roads are not, you saw a few roads there which are quite good. There are other roads which are not that easy to drive on, and deep sand and so on. So we need 4x4s and so on. Photographically, you don't have time. Number one, you don't have space for tripods and all these kind of filters, and you don't have time. So most of us have two kits. One a longer lens. In my case, it's a 300mm prime 2.8, and I use it on a crop censored camera 1.5 plus sometimes teleconverters and so on. Basically, you have a long kit so you have long reach, and then you have another kit with a shorter range for when you want a bit more landscape and the environment in your pictures. And then I used on the previous trips full frame Nikon and the 70-200. I have left Nikon, and on my next visit I will be using a Olympus Micro Four Thirds with a 300mm f4 prime and a Sony full frame with 70-200 most probably. So basically I have left the normal DSLRs to go to mirrorless, and I don't use Nikon anymore. Not because they were not good or anything, just because it happened to be that I got a really good price on some Olympus gear and so on. So, Kalahari Desert. You see on the circle there where it is. Kalahari Desert ranges in 3 countries: Botswana, Namibia, and South Africa. It's huge. The orange part in the map is what we call the Kalahari Basin, and the darker red is the Kalahari Desert, which is not really a desert. It's a semi-desert. The annual rainfall is too much to be called a true desert. The size of the Kalahari Desert is 930,000 square kilometers, which is more or less like 2 times Spain, or 3,000 times the size of Malta. We are primarily in a park. Now, it's not a park which you might think of when I say a park. It's basically an area which is called the Kalahari Transfrontier Park, which is within that green circle. And that's the size of Switzerland approximately. And it's called a Transfrontier Park because it has no borders. The animals can roam free between Botswana and South Africa, and so can we. Namibia didn't want to take part in this because of border control and so on. So that this kind of park is not part of Namibia. So this green part here, if we enlarge it, is the big red sort of line in the middle is the border between South Africa and Botswana. And it's also an old dried out riverbed. The main entrance to the park is in the south. It's called Twee Rivieren, and it means 2 rivers in Dutch. And you see this, there are 2 lines up going north to two red lines. The one to the east is called the Nossob River or the Nossob Valley, and the one to the left is called the Aub Valley. And these are two dried out river beds, and we travel up and down these. And you can see there are small crossroads between them, which we travel when we need to move from one to another. And why do we do this? Yes, because there are roads just next to the riverbeds, so we can actually travel. And it also has camps, camping places, lodges, and so on, so we can actually sleep somewhere. As you see, there are also a lot of smaller red roads which go crisscross over the whole park, and that is 4x4 trails where you really need to be equipped. And there are no shops, there is no place to fill up petrol, there is nothing of the sort. So along these two riverbeds, the South African army used to patrol up and when they were going to invade Namibia. This is like 150 years ago, something like that. So to support their troops, they used to drill water holes, and these water holes is a gold mine for us, because these water holes are still in use today, driven by solar power. And this is where animals come to drink, and with the grazers coming to drink, we also have the predators following suit. So this is why this is so popular, because it's relatively easy access. You drive on the roads, there are camps, there is petrol station, there are small shops along the way. So it's very, very comfortable. So for you who might, as I said, it's quite large, 2 times Spain. This is just an interesting little fact. Many of you might know about it, but we are used to the countries. Africa is huge. We are used to the countries like on the Northern Hemisphere, Europe, America, and so on, to look quite large. But they are enlarged on our normal maps. They are enlarged because the world is not a 2-dimensional map. We are a globe. So if you try to take a globe and make it into a flat paper, something has to give. You have to cut somewhere. And what are you going to fill up those cuts with? These maps we're using nowadays is something called the Mercator projection, and they are made for sailing. So when they made this kind of map, they make sure that the sailing distances are correct. So they had to fill up, the lands had to be bigger. So that means that Greenland, for example, which is huge when we see it on a map, if you pull that towards the equator, it becomes not tiny, but very small. So basically all the countries on the equator are sort of their true size, but all the countries north and south of the equator are inflated in size. So in Africa, you actually fit all of Europe, China, United States, Japan, and India. And that you wouldn't imagine that if you just look at the normal map. That was just something, curiosity. So here we go. You have probably recognized these people. This is the Sun people, or Bushmen. Bushmen is a bit of a sort of a racist term for them. They don't like it, so they prefer to use the Sun people. This is the true inhabitants of this desert, and they were made famous by the films in the 80s called The Gods Must Be Crazy, if you remember those 3 or 4 films. An amazing people, which unfortunately suffered a lot during the Dutch colonial era, where they were basically killed off like a genocide. They're still living on the edges of society a bit. They have big problems with poverty, alcoholism, and so on. These people used to be called the pure natives, the only people in the world which are not immigrants. They have lived where they live forever. And all other people come from these. And interesting with them is that none of them, more or less, lives traditionally today. They all have, as far as I know, there might be some, but I've done some research on it, and none of them lives traditionally. There are some tourist setups where they keep their traditions and so on alive. This is not my photo, I should say. This I have borrowed online. I have this and one other photo, which are not mine in this presentation, simply because I have never seen them personally. I have plans to go and visit one of these sort of tribes where we can still see how they live and work and so on. But you cannot have a presentation about Kalahari without mentioning the Sun people. So first, the landscape. What landscape do we have here? The first thing that meets us is, apart from general things, but the first thing you notice is this sort of bale of haze, which you see everywhere on top of in this case, a road sign, trees, power lines, everywhere where they can fit. And it's not just hay, it's actually a bird nest by sociable weavers, they're called. It's a small bird, but they are living colonies. So a nest like this can sustain hundreds of birds, and they never stop maintaining or adding to the nest. So there is actually photographic evidence of these kind of nests over 100 years old. And they continue building on it until the support structure breaks. The branch breaks, the phone line, the power line falls, or whatever. And they look, if you just look at them briefly, they look, all of them look deserted, but they rarely are. This is taken with a 70 to 200 lens to include a bit of the landscape. But when I change to my longer lens, you actually see a lot of activity. As you see, there's beautiful skies. This is sunset on the way back to our camp one day. And there's always beautiful sunrises and sunsets in Kalahari, always. And you might wonder why. Because the sand, it kicks up a lot of dust in the air, a lot of particles, which makes for nice sunsets. And the sand is actually rusted. It's quartzite with iron oxide. So basically it's sand particles which have rusted. That's why you have this red and orange and yellow tones on the sand. Depending where you are, it's a little bit different colors. So that's why we always get these beautiful sunrises and sunsets. Here you can see the sand. In this specific area, it's a bit more orangey. If you travel, you've probably seen the pictures of the Namib Desert, where you just see sand dunes which are totally red, and there is a dead tree in the middle. It's a very popular photographic subject. There, the sand is more red. So this is how we live in some places. So photographically, there are a few challenges, obviously, when you photograph here. It's not like going in a city or photographing in a studio, which has different challenges, obviously. But here we battle a lot with dust. That's why you preferably want to have 2 or even maybe 3 kits with you. So you do not have to change lens. You do not want to change lens. You can, if you're careful, but preferably you don't want to change the lens for all the duration of your stay. Then obviously we have heat, which is a problem for many. I never found it a problem because I actually feel it's more comfortable there than it is here in summer. It's a little bit hotter, but it's dry. You don't sweat. Plus heat also creates some other problems, which I will show you later on. Vegetation is always a problem for a wildlife photographer. Animals likes to hide. And more often than not, you have a grass or branch or something going through the head or it looks like it goes through the head, or it sticks out in the eye of the animal, or whatever. Obviously, in a desert, it's less of a problem than, for example, in a savanna or a forest, but it's still a problem. Then you have animal behavior. I put it as animal behavior, access, and light. Animal behavior comes a little bit with experience. It's not a model where you can tell them what to do. They don't follow scripts very well. So you have to be able to read the animal's behavior a bit, and that obviously comes with experience. If you just react to an animal behavior, you normally don't have time to take your photos. Preferably, you want to anticipate what's going to happen before it actually happens, so that you're prepared with your settings and placement of your vehicle and all these kind of things. That's obviously not an exact science, but the more experience you have, the more chances you have to get it right. Access, what I mean with that is that we drive on a road. We're not allowed to drive off-road in this place. So if the lions are far away, we cannot access them. That's obviously a problem photographically, but ethically it makes sense. Otherwise you will have vehicles driving all over the place and harassing animals and so on. If you do it, you always see people, there's always people who cannot follow the rules. And then they will get really harsh punishments, fees, fines and so on. And the light. In Africa, you have morning light, which is gorgeous, and you have evening light, which is equally gorgeous like everywhere else. The sun rises very fast, and during the day it's straight up and very harsh light, very harsh shadows. You can still work, obviously, but we tend to rest during these times. Lunch, going through pictures, download memory cards, etc. There's always action in action. I have a point here as well. Wildlife, this is not about Africa. This is general for wildlife photography. You have a lot of time where there's no action going on. And you have to be ready, because the action can happen very fast and it finishes very fast. So if you just sit in half asleep because you have been 3 hours doing nothing, that minute when something actually happens, you have to be ready. So the guests on our tours, we encourage them to constantly sit with their camera and adjust for lights and try to anticipate what's going to happen and so on. For me, it's a little bit hard because I drive, so I cannot, adjust my settings whilst I'm driving, obviously. But when I'm there with guests, obviously the guests are it's more important that the guests get the pictures than I get them. Then we have impatience and boredom, which goes a little bit hand in hand. When you have a long periods of time with no action, nothing happening, you tend to be bored and impatient. And, with everything that comes with that, it can be a problem. Then I have the last piece here is experience versus photography versus originality. Experience, many people who come with us, or even for me, sometimes, obviously, the experience of seeing these animals or seeing a behavior or something like that have to compete with your photography. Some people actually put down their cameras and just enjoy what they're seeing. Because when you're taking a photograph, it's hard to enjoy what's actually going on because you're so engulfed in your settings and composition and all these kind of things. And then you have the next one, originality. It's easy to be, especially with these kind of things, which maybe people go once in their life to on a safari or something like that. It's easy to forget about your originality when you're taking photos. You just take the photos for the sake of taking the photo. And sometimes you don't have time to be original and try to think a little bit different. But we try to encourage people who come with us, obviously, to also, first of all, the experience. And then once you do photography, also try to think about not doing the obvious shot. The Kalahari lion, one of the main reasons why many people go to Kalahari is to see the lions. Here's a small film again about the Kalahari lion. This part of the clips were in the previous one. should be coming here. So here we're basically driving next to it. You can see how relaxed it is. They don't react to vehicles at all. If you're not obviously trying to run over them or honking or something like that, but they're very used to vehicles. And basically you're so close, I can almost touch him if I want to, which you don't want to. So here it's how it can be. They don't care about roads. They like walking on roads because it's easy, but they walk straight. He's on the way to a water hole. He knows exactly where it is. He just walks completely straight. So the Kalahari lion is famous for their black manes. And why do they have black manes? We might wonder. Not all of them do, but many have. Many have blacker or darker manes than the rest of Africa. And there is researchers obviously trying to figure out this and so on. But one of the main reasons is the females in this area tend to prefer the black manes. So through evolution and so on, the black males, the black maned Kalahari lions have thrived. With the black mane comes obviously problems. They tend to overheat more easily than the lighter maned lions. There are actually parts in Africa where the males don't have a mane, which is also interesting. So this image is one of those where I try to talk, I mentioned before, experience versus photography versus originality. I was in the second vehicle on the previous film. We have a first vehicle and a second vehicle when we go. The first vehicle drives first. And normally that vehicle gets the best sightings that day because they're first in line. Then obviously for the guests, we turn them around. So we have every second day you stay in the first vehicle and so on. But I was in the second vehicle and it was amazing seeing these lions so close up and so on. So then you have this problem, the experience of just having these lions so close. Photography wise, it was a bit of a problem because I just, most of the time, the car I was driving, we had its back, the butt of the lion, so to speak. And what do you do with that? It's not so interesting. So me, I having seen lions a few times, I got quickly over this experience and the excitement and so on. I tried to think a little bit more original. What can I do with this situation? And I came up with this instead of getting the backside of a lion or walking on a road, which is not that interesting. I came up with this. So that is what I'm trying to explain with the struggle, experience photography versus photography and so on. Then you have another of these challenges which I listed before, animal behavior, access and light. In this case, we saw a lion, a pride of lions far away. And between us and them, there was a water hole. And it was the evening or late afternoon. And we were more or less sure that the lions were waiting. They were in the shade. And they were waiting to come down to drink. We can never be 100% sure, but we were pretty sure this time. We couldn't drive up to the lions, obviously, because we have to stay on the road. So we had to sit and wait for these lions to maybe come down. Light, obviously, there's always an issue. Are they going to come before the light? The evening light is the gorgeous golden light. Are they going to come perfectly so they come in that light, or are they going to come just after it's getting dark? In this time they just came before the golden light. Perfect timing. They came down, they settled down, and they started drinking and playing and so on. And then the golden light set in. So it was perfect this time. Here's another time when we just came down from our camp in the morning, and this young male lion decided to come over the dunes and position himself in the first rays of light that morning to warm up a bit. The nights in the desert can be very, very cold, even for the animals, obviously. This, I included this image not because it's any masterpiece of any sort. I just want to show that these lions are not in any way killing machines like they're portrayed to be sometimes. And most of the time they're sleeping. Estimations say they sleep about approximately 20 hours a day. So you are extremely happy when you have a lion actually moving. And as you can see, they have plenty of prey, but they will do absolutely nothing. They are not interested at all, partly because they rely on the element of surprise when they hunt. And in this case, they will have no way of surprising the wildebeest. Plus, they don't hunt much during the day. And this one, this is again the same time as the previous, the film, the same sighting. And in fact, this is just a good reminder for us that a lot of things happening behind us. We tend to be focused what's happening in front of us all the time when you're out shooting wildlife or in nature in general. But just as much happening behind you as it happens in front of you. And in fact, this lion came up behind us when we were driving slowly on the road, trying to look for other things. And so it's a good reminder. This is an interesting shot. It's like a David and Goliath moment. The porcupine, these are porcupine quills. Lions love porcupine meat. And they also, when the porcupine move, they make like almost like a rattling sound. And it's sort of irresistible for these cats. Even house cats, they like a rattle or something to play with. And this is the lion's rattle. The problem is that these quills can easily hurt or very often, in fact, kill a lion. Not the actual quills itself, but the fact if they get them, for example, under their paws and they break and they remain inside the paw, they cannot walk. And if they cannot walk, they cannot hunt. It can get infected and all these kind of things. You can see on this picture how actually deep inside it is. And I'm sure many of you at one point in time have stepped on a sea urchin here in Malta, and it's more or less the same thing. The quills, they break off easily and you cannot get them out. And obviously a lion doesn't have access to any, tweezers or anything like that. It has its mouth only, and all the places where it cannot reach has to come out on its own. That's the only way. In fact, we think that this lion died from this because we cannot be 100% sure, but we are more or less sure because we heard stories about it afterwards. He could not walk when we saw this one. He was limping very badly, and some of them he couldn't simply get out. And this is how it can look. This is the second image, which is not mine. I have never managed to see a porcupine ever, but this is how they are. They love the porcupines. All the cats love the porcupines. Here is just another image of a lion in this light, which is so amazing in the Kalahari or in the deserts in general. Here we have the problem, another challenge which I mentioned, vegetation again. This is one of the first images of a lion, or the first lion I saw in Kalahari on my first visit. And all this blur in front is grass. And this is very often how you find them. And if you find them sleeping or laying down like this behind grass, you can almost be sure that they're going to stay like that. So you can almost leave. Since they sleep so much, they stay in one position for a very long time. This image I did more post-processing on this image than I normally do. And I actually used it for the front part of this presentation. And as I said, vegetation is very often a problem. To finish off this lion section, lion is always a problem when you are in these areas. And the camps and so on, they always tell you not to go out when it's dark and all these kind of things. And in this camp, you park your car actually inside sort of a a ramp or drive or whatever you could call it, with gates. So you stop outside, you open the gate, you drive in quickly, and you close the gate after you. And we obviously, on the first time we were there, we did that. We followed all the instructions and so on, and then we take all the gear and all the bags inside, and we go out at the back. Then it's wide open. So you wonder sometimes why they have the rules. Here it's just 1 meter, 1.5 down to the grass after the on the other side of the veranda, and any lion or leopard or whatever can jump up there easily. This is how it is sometimes. Breakfast time in the desert. You see the giraffe there that's the dried out riverbed, one of the dried out riverbeds there. This is on the border to Namibia actually. So it's a beautiful thing to have breakfast with the giraffe looking at you. You can also have a shower. This is the shower to the left, and 2 wild lions in front of you. They're staying down there in the salt pan. It's getting evening, so they're getting ready to move. So you have to keep an eye on them whilst you're showering. They will not come up to you. They try to avoid you as much as they can, but it's still a bit nerve-wracking sometimes, especially if if it's your first time. I'm just going to leave that for a minute there. Interesting read. Like most of the big predators around the world, the lions obviously have problems with humans and human activity. So, from the biggest cat to one of the smallest, the African wildcat. And you might say that I'm cheating and it's my neighbor's cat or something. And it's sort of true. It's this cat is the origin of all house cats. So if you have a cat at home, it originates from this one way or another. The remains of this type of cat was actually found in a grave in Cyprus about 9,500 years ago, I think it was. And it's the first evidence of a close relation between human and cat, which is quite interesting. And this is also, you won't see it so much on this picture, but here I struggled with heat. One of the challenges I mentioned before was heat. And heat, yes, it's hot for us, but also the problem with heat when you take photos is, especially on a longer distance, is that you have heat flickering or heat over a barbecue. The air can vibrate sometimes, or over a highway, a tarmac way when it's really hot. And it's the same in the desert. So this, I think, to get this was a relatively easy subject. He was laying still, he didn't move. And but I think I took hundreds of photos before I got a sharp one on this one, because of all the heat haze, they call it. And I never got it 100% sharp, but I got it decent in the end. But it was a big struggle. So when you see these kind of images, you don't really realize sometimes, if you look at National Geographic or whatever, there are some different struggles sometimes. Yeah, these little creatures, very popular, obviously. The meerkats were made popular by the Lion King back in the days with Timon and Pumbaa. And meerkat is Dutch, and it means sea cat, or the cat of the sea, which is extremely funny because these doesn't exist anywhere near the sea, and it's not a cat. They think it might have been originally, I don't know how to pronounce it really, because I don't know Dutch, but meerkat, which is very close to meerkat, and that means termite cat, which makes more sense. And they love termites, to eat them, and also to dig in the termite mounds for their own burrows and so on. And it sort of looks like a cat, so that makes more sense. In fact, they're related to mongoose, the mongoose more. We often see them portrayed like this, and that is because all wildlife photography, when things looks a little bit human and looks cute, it's very popular. All baby animals are always more popular than the grown-up, and as soon as they do something remotely human, it's also very popular. This is a very strange pose, actually, or not a strange pose, but they don't spend much time like this. This is just to keep guard or to look out for something when they want to have a little bit higher viewpoint. It's like us standing up on our toes to look over something, for example. They stay guard. They always have 1 or 2 guards looking out for potential threats when the rest of the family group is digging for food. So this is how you see them generally. They dig all day long, and they eat insects mostly, and scorpions and so on. They never have to drink ever in all their lives. They get all their liquid from the bugs that they eat. As you see, this photograph is not very well. It's not sharp in the right places, and it's not compositioned very well. But this is the only photograph I got of this event with the scorpion. That's why I included it. Kleptoparasites is something that we have a lot of in the animal world. Kleptoparasites are thieves, basically. And one of the most famous ones is this one, the spotted hyena. Basically, they steal the food instead of hunting it themselves. These are very good hunters also, but if they get an opportunity to steal their food, they gladly do it. And they're very good at it as well. Here we have a younger hyena. And we have this one. This is a very interesting one. He has been in a car wash, I think. This is a brown hyena. It's a very rare type of hyena, and it doesn't look, the fur doesn't look like that normally. I don't know what he has been doing. But as you can see, this is taken against the light, which always makes for interesting images, in my opinion. This is also a brown hyena. The Kalahari Desert is one of the best places in the world to see this hyena, which is very hard to find them and to see them. This is the images I personally enjoy more than the documentary style images, which I've been showing mostly so far. A bit more. This is a longer shutter speed with a bit of panning and so on. And longer shutter speeds in the middle of the day in the desert is a bit challenging because obviously you get easily overexposed the images. And just to show you, this is the original image, how it looks. There will be more examples of this, more extreme examples later on. But basically, I use this technique quite often. I take longer shutter speeds in the middle of the day, and you get them overexposed, and then you bring back the blacks or the shadows, and you get this almost like a pencil drawing look. Oops. Here we have another kleptoparasite, another thief, which is very interesting. It's a drongo. Dark subjects, completely dark animals, are obviously very hard to photograph as well, because of the contrast in the bright light. This is an expert in mimicking other animal sounds. So what it does, it very often stays near the meerkats, and when it sees that one of the meerkats got up some nice insect or some nice bug or something, it sounds like, for example, like a hawk or some bird of prey of some sort. And the meerkats go bananas, chaos. They just drop everything and run into their burrows to hide. And then this drongo, this bird, just flies down and it gets a free meal. Then he might try it again after some time, but then the meerkats have realized that he's just trying to fool us. And then this bird is so smart, so what he does, he waits a little bit more, And then he makes the sound of the meerkats' guards themselves. So the meerkats, obviously they think, oh, now it's one of ours who calls out the alarm. And they run again, and he gets his second meal for free. A very clever bird. Food, not our food, animal food. There's a lot of, obviously, there's a lot of grazers eating grass and plants and so on. Then this is the basis of all the predators. You have birds of prey, you have smaller carnivores eating these mice and rodents of some sort. Here you have a ground squirrel. It looks like he's eating someone's finger, but it's a root of some sort. These are also extremely well-adapted animals. He doesn't have to drink or anything. When it's hot, they put up their tail above them, so it looks like you come over a plain and you see these little, you can see 20 or 30 of these. It looks like they have an umbrella. They have put up their tail over them like an umbrella to have shade. They create their own shade. These are hard to photograph because they are on the ground and they're very small, and we sit in vehicles. So you will very often have a boring photograph when you shoot these, because you're photographing from above. You want to be one of the basic things for any wildlife photography is that you want to be on eye level with your subject to get that presence. And if you are taller than them, it's a problem. So we often try to find the animals in a higher position than us, like on the bank, or if they sit in a tree or on a stone or something like that. So they come either higher than us or eye level. Then you get the best shots, the most engaging shots, which is very challenging when you have small subjects, if you sit in a car. Here we have a Cape fox. Obviously, these animals hunt all the rodents and even small lizards and so on. And here we had amazing. These just 2 minutes from our camp. In this case, there was a family, and we had the most amazing sunrise, and we could get loads of shots with this beautiful rim light, we call it, around the animals. So you get sort of the outline. You have to underexpose for shots like this to be able to get out the rim light properly. Here is another one of these images that I love myself. Longer shutter speeds to get this more abstract view. This is also a formidable hunter called the secretary bird. They hunt all day long in the middle of the day. They walk all the time walking, and they hunt for lizards and chameleons and snakes and everything. And here are just other pictures of these birds of prey who hunt these rodents. Then we also have lion food in this section about food. 210 kilos approximately. An iconic animal for this area with those beautiful horns. Also extremely well adapted to the desert life. They can even raise their own core temperature to avoid sweating, to avoid losing liquid. And they even have a sort of a cooling system for the blood going to the brain, not to overheat. And you rarely see them with their side to the sun. They often stay with their backside to the sun, not to expose as little as possible of their body. Here is another picture. Obviously, they don't. Here you can say, but he's the one up to the left is standing to his side to the sun. Yes, they don't. They have to move, so they cannot always do like that, but they often do it. The caracal. It's probably an animal which you have not heard of. It's a little known animal, cat. It's like a lynx. It's also called a desert lynx. And this is one of them. Few wildlife photographers have ever seen one of these, let alone photograph it. And that is not because it's extremely rare or anything. It's just extremely shy, hunts mostly at night, and in a habitat which is hard to find them, basically. Here we have again the same problem with vegetation. This is an image which is not sharp in the right places. It's hard for the autofocus to grab onto the right place here, with all these tall grass sticking up everywhere. This one, on the other hand, is one of my favorite personal shots. Here I use the vegetation to, in my opinion, to my advantage by shooting through the vegetation. The vegetation was, I used manual focus here, and the vegetation was a bit closer to me than on the previous shot, so you get it more blurred. And I could manage to get it, I found like an opening in the bush, so I could focus properly and get the eye and the whole head actually sharp in this case. So you can also use, the vegetation can be a problem, but you have to try to turn the problems into a benefit instead. So many people might wonder how we live when we're out on these places, and we live in various places, but we are there for photography and photography only. Obviously it's a beautiful experience and all that, but we are there to take photos. So we want to maximize the time we have for photography and photography related activities, such as looking at each other's images, talking about images, image critique sessions with the guests, and so on. So we live, you can choose to camp with a tent. You bring your own tent or like a off-road caravan or something like that. But what happens then is that you have to cook your own food. You have to raise the tent. You have to make sure you have an electric fence for lions. You have to, there's a lot of things that you have to do, and that takes time from photography. And in my opinion, it makes you also a bit more tired. And when you're tired, you don't take good photographs. So we try to minimize that, not because we enjoy the luxury, but simply because we want to focus on our photography, nothing else. So we stay mostly in the lodges or the camps. It's more expensive, yes, but we're not there. We're there to take photos. So when we come home, we can stay out as late as possible, because when we come home, there's food ready. We don't have to stay cooking in most of the places. There are some places where we don't have a choice. But so we come home, there is a hot shower, we can refresh ourselves, and we can be ready for the next time. And here is, I think it's more film again. No. So here is how it looks from the lounge tent. Normally these places have like a big tent or a big hut. It's actually tents, which they have sort of improved with furniture and wooden floors and stuff. And this is where you eat, and you can sit and have critique sessions. And they have a small bar in this place where you can order some beer or gin and tonics or whatever you want. And then through the opening there, you see where we live. They also have an owl who stays there. And out here is then the places where the rooms, so to speak. And you follow the path there, and there's many of these huts on either side of this main tent. So you saw these ramps going out. We had a dinner once, and when we walked back to our tents, we found these tracks. And as you saw, everything was open. And this is leopard tracks, which had just walked outside the main tent. And we could see on the tracks that the leopard didn't stop, it didn't run, it didn't do anything. It just walked straight past. It could see us, it could smell us, it could hear us, but they're not interested in us. So it just walked past us like 20 meters from us on its way. And it's one of this is a leopard for the people who don't know. Cheetah. It's also one of the best places in the world to photograph this endangered species, the cheetah. Fastest land animal on Earth, 110 kilometers an hour in bursts of about 100 meters, and then it has to stop, not to overheat and die. Highly specialized animal. Basically, if it gets injured, it will die. So they're very careful, very skittish, and they lose a lot of their prey because any other predator that comes by, it will just leave because it cannot afford getting any injury. Here we had one of these action problems or challenge. We were watching these oryx antelopes at the waterhole, and all of a sudden these 3 cheetahs just show up from behind. And personally, I didn't manage to change my cameras or to do anything that I wanted. I just sort of some snapshots, and it was over in a minute. But it was, some of us got interesting shots of because they do like mock, both of them, because a cheetah would never take down one of these. But they're still wary of each other, and they do mock attacks. You see one of the oryxes is running away up the dunes, and one of them is sort of facing the predator. They all have different characters and so on. So it was an interesting experience, but no amazing shots. Here's another one of these kind of images I like. Longer shutter speeds. It comes a bit more painterly, or some people just call them blurry. But if you try to experiment with the shots, you can start doing a bit like this instead of the normal shots. Here's the same. This is a double exposure. So the golden light, as you see sort of in the foreground, that's a bush on the other side of the animal, where the light shines straight through it. And I took an out of focus shot, and in the camera, first I took a photo of the cheetah, and then I took a photo of this out of focus bush where the sun shines through the leaves, and then right after the cheetah shot, and then the camera sandwiched them, and you get out a slightly different shot. And again, this is the thing, the experience versus originality. Just as cheetah sleeping on the ground is not something special, try to do it a little bit more unique with this double exposure. One day we came across this scene. It's not so sexy to have 2 full cheetahs. It almost looks like it's pregnant, but it has been eating on a road in the most extreme harsh light you can imagine. You can choose to just move on or watch it, just see what's going on for a bit, and then move on for the next something better. But as you can see in the shadow, there is patches of light shining through the foliage of the tree in the shadow. They stay in the shadow, which is a good thing. So we stayed a bit, and you come across, as I said, you come across these challenges, light problems and animal behavior. They don't do anything. Staying on a road is not that nice, and nothing happens, and so on. But I chose them to try to think. The first impression is, oh, what is this? Let's leave. But then you actually start working the scene, and you try to think. Then you see, I saw these patches of light going through the foliage, and I waited for one of the cheetahs to move into one of those and moved my vehicle a little bit so that I got sort of a backlight or semi backlight, a sort of side backlight, and that means that the whiskers and his sort of beard and the tooth, in this case, a bloody tooth because they've been eating, being accentuated in the shot, and twisting the white balance a little bit so you get a bit more golden light than this very harsh, strong light. Here's another example of this in action. This photo that I'm going to show you later on, this experience, because the photos are not something amazing, but this experience took all in all about 3 hours. We come across this group of springbok, which are the South Africa's national animal, in fact, and they're all hovering under this tree. Everyone wants to get a piece of the shade. Before this, we just saw a cheetah, a female cheetah lying under a tree, and the cheetah has obviously seen these. The cheetah hunts during the day to avoid other big predators like lions and so on, which hunts mostly during night or dusk or dawn. But the springboks was too far away from the cheetah to hunt it, because it wouldn't have a chance. So it was waiting for one of the cheetahs to move to the next tree or stray out of the flock a bit. And after about 45 minutes waiting, one of the springboks moved towards the cheetah for one reason or another. And then after a few seconds, the cheetah just exploded, and boom, it tripped this animal just in front of my vehicle. For a week, I had been thinking I should set up a GoPro camera on the bumper of my vehicle, but I never did. And I regret that now, because I would have an amazing film sequence of this cheetah tripping the springbok just 5 meters in front of my car and then strangling it. What happens is that they run extremely fast for a burst, and then they have to strangle this springbok with their teeth, and they get extremely exhausted. So once they have killed their prey, they also have to carry it back to the shade, because it cannot stay in the middle of the sun eating it. It's hot, and it can easily be discovered by a lion or a hyena or something like that. So it always moves the prey back into a bush or under a tree or something like that, which is very hard. They weigh more or less the same, these two, and he has to move this prey with its teeth. So what happened? After killing it, waited a bit for about 15-20 minutes until it started moving it. And then all of a sudden, it just left this springbok in the middle of the riverbed and moved back to the shade under a tree to gain some strength again. And after half an hour or so, it came back to pull it the rest of the way back into shade. And we thought that was it then. But then it left the prey and walked backwards again. We said, after all this time, like 2.5 hours in total, it just left. So we waited a bit, and then she's coming back with her one of her cubs, which was badly injured, by the way. If you can see it on the picture, it has a big hole in its side, the cub. But it was still alive, so it was probably fine. So these cubs have been staying patiently under a bush or something for 3 hours, and the mummy went back to get them so that they could eat this prey. So many of the cars, they just stopped and saw this cheetah under the tree and then just left. But with some patience, you are rewarded with an incredible experience. Not so great shots in this time, but a nice experience. Springbok, they used to exist in tens of thousands, which they don't do anymore. Still large herds in the Kalahari, but not any tens of thousands herds anymore. And again, you tend to forget these animals because they are everywhere. When you're driving around, you see all these every day, many times a day. So they become sort of boring after some time. But if you actually stay and take the patience to shoot them and work with them, you can turn out some interesting images. And again, if you wait and you're careful and you know what you're doing, you can get very close to these animals. As I said, they have different personalities, and if you drive up slowly, most of them will just run off, but some of them will stay, and you can get these close-ups from the car where they stay maybe 4 or 5 meters away. But you have to know what you're doing. You cannot just drive fast up and break the car and throw out the camera and think you're gonna catch them. They will run off immediately. And dust, again, can work to your advantage if you plan your shots. This was on the way home. Actually, it was 5 minutes before 2 weeks trip ended. We came across these springboks in a water hole, and we had the dust flowing from them moving, and the sun setting behind us. So you can get some amazing shots with the dust. In fact, sometimes we were braking the car very suddenly to create dust for the car behind us, so that they could get dust, lions in dust. When there was no dust, we sort of created it ourselves. So yeah, the sort of more common animals, if you take the time to work with them, you can get interesting shots as well. Again, here comes a little bit more different type of photography, more abstract or sort of surrealistic, or whatever you want to call it. Everyone has different names for these kind of shots. This is actually not a springbok, it's another type of antelope. It's called a steinbok. And here again comes one of these shots which looks a bit like a pencil drawing. And here comes the original shot. Most of us will probably have thrown away this picture when we see them, when we go through the images. But these, I shoot them like this on purpose when I'm in that mood, because I know that I can increase the shadows later on, and I get this kind of effect which I like personally. Again, dust is the wildebeest, a very iconic animal as well. It is famous for being the ugliest animal in Africa. And the legend says that the wildebeest was the last animal God created, and he only had spare parts left to create it. So he took the head from a warthog, the horn from a buffalo, body of a hyena, stripes from a zebra, and the tail of a giraffe. And he created this animal which looks a little bit unproportionate at times. Again, a shot against the sun with the dust making almost like it's walking in fire. I'm going to end this with the jackal, which is an ever-present animal. You can go a long time without seeing any lions or cheetahs or leopards for sure. Very hard to see. Jackals are always out in the middle of the day and everything. And if you have nothing else to shoot, you can almost always shoot jackals. The jackals looks like a fox, same size as a fox, more or less. And they have the same role in myths and legends and fables as the fox. In Western society, it's considered to be not so strong, but very smart and cunning. And the lion is portrayed as a big, strong, but very stupid animal. And the same here with panning and so on. And they have different personalities, as I have said. We came across, I think it was 3 or maybe 4 pups on the side of the road. And one of the pups immediately were interested in our vehicles and came up to us. And as you can see, sometimes it's perfectly okay to cut off body parts in the shots. You don't always have to have the whole animal in the picture. In my opinion, a shot like this, sort of, you get a bigger the feeling of closeness when you cut off certain parts. and as I said, this one was a very curious pup, whilst his brother or sister was very wary. He just remained behind the bush, the bushes there, and but you could get an interesting shot as well. I know that these kind of shots sort of divide photographers or people in general. Some people think they're totally rubbish, whilst they don't understand at all, and some people love them. And yes, there's always something going on with jackals, squabbles. They're always moving around. They rarely sit still, and they very often squabble for territory, and they're territorial animals, and you can get interesting shots. Gonna end up with this one, panning. This is sort of, I wanted to end with this one because this is the shots that I love myself, these kind of shots. It's just, as I said before, long shutter speed and panning. Yeah, thank you. For that I went over 70 minutes, 1 hour, 10 minutes. Yeah, so if you're interested in seeing more of my work, obviously you can go to my website, johanssiggesson.com, and I have also a store where I sell my prints and so on, if you're interested in that.
Thanks, Johan. It was very interesting from my end. I enjoyed it to the full. I am going to ask our participants if they have any questions. Paul wants to ask a question to Johan. Vince, maybe you can.
Paul de Guara.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Paul.
Okay. Hi, good evening, Johansson.
Hi, good evening.
I really liked your photography, especially the ones which concerned intentional camera movement. It's lovely. I love it. And of course, the ones which have background lighting, they are phenomenal. Now, what typical settings do you put in your camera? Do you go manual, aperture priority, or speed priority?
Manual, never. Extremely rarely. I would say never, but there is obviously sometimes when you do it, but extremely rarely, simply because you don't have time. Yeah. Things happening so fast. If there is something special, things are slow, people, some animals are staying still for a long time, or you want to do something special, yes, maybe. But otherwise, I alternate between aperture or shutter speed priority, depending what I want. Before I always used to use aperture priority, but lately I've turned more and more to shutter speed priority, because most of the time we shoot animals that move. Mm-hmm. And then the shutter speed is more important than the actual aperture. So more and more to aperture, but those two all the time, basically.
All right. Now that you're going to be using a mirrorless camera, I think dust will be a problem, and that's why you never remove the lens from your camera.
Yeah, especially in these areas where there is dusty. If you're in the rainforest, you have other problems, but you don't have dust problems. But also, we very often shoot on wide open, so a low F number, right? And then the dust is less of a problem. You don't really see it in the finished product. It's another thing if you shoot landscapes where you close down a bit and you shoot on F 8 or 14 or whatever you shoot on. Then you have more of a problem. But I normally shoot F 2.8 or 4, and it becomes less of a problem. The mirrorless, the one I'm using now, is an F4, which basically you have the aperture of F8, so it becomes a little bit more of a problem because of the cropping and that problem. But I never really found the problem. The Olympus is extremely good with this as well. It has a cleaning system, if I have understood it correctly, which basically shoots on the sensor regularly an air jet stream on the sensor, so it cleans it. I've never ever had problems with the Olympus. And I just got my Sony now, and I already have loads of dust on it. I cannot swear, but someone told me that a friend of mine is an Olympus ambassador in Sweden, and he mentioned this sort of puffs of air going on the sensor to clean it, which is fantastic if that's true. And I have to say I have no problems with dust on the Olympus, to be honest. But yeah, that's why we don't change lenses, or we try to avoid it as much as possible.
And I wonder if I can be a little bit indiscreet, but what would be the typical cost of traveling to such a place?
In fact, I wanted to mention, if someone wants to come with us, we're going, we have 2 Maltese actually coming with us next November. We were going in November, but obviously it was cancelled, so the whole trip was moved till next November. We have 2 places left on one of the trips, I believe, and 1 left on the other one. And I think it's not cheap. I think the cost is about 5,000 euros. Plus air travel. Air travel, everything, it's not included because everyone comes from different places and so on. It's never included on these trips. I think it was 5,000 something, if I remember correctly.
And where can you find such information? On your webpage?
Just if you want to have, it's better you contact me afterwards privately, and I send you the information, because the company I work for is Swedish, and they have just removed their English website actually. So I will have to get the information for you from them and send it to you.
Okay, thank you very much for answering.
So just
my
contact me
questions.
afterwards. I will let you know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any more questions? You have words of praise in the chat, Johan. Most of the participants enjoyed your webinar. We had what
Tony,
happened
that's so party, Stephen. Tony, he wants to ask a question.
Something, Johan, maybe you're sharing. Okay, thank you. Yes, Tony. Tony and Joe.
Okay, are you hearing me?
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
I just wanted to say something, actually, not really ask a question, Johan. I love the way you combined impressionistic with wildlife.
Thank you.
I love it.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's what I'm trying
makes
to
your
do.
work so. That's what made your work so original, in my honest opinion, and made impact.
That's my sort of aim. I take, obviously, as you saw, many documentary images.
Yes.
But it's not it's not my passion, so to speak. I'm coming from a graphic background. I'm a graphic designer, studied that. Many of wildlife photographers come from a more biology or scientific background. And I think that kind of influences me in the way I try to shoot my photographs. The problem with that is that it's more, the documentary photography is relatively easy once you have mastered the techniques, with exposure and all that. You place your subject in the thirds and you're done. Lovely lights and you're done. And for me, it becomes, after a while, it becomes boring. So I try to experiment with other things, and that's what I enjoy with the more graphical images. And if you go to my website, you will see more of those.
I think not because it's in your face, but I think you excel at it. My honest opinion. Prosit, well done. Thank you. I'm gonna mute myself. Thank you.
Johan, Carm is asking, why lions ignore vehicles? How about that?
Number one, I don't think they understand. If you put out your hand out of the window, they will realize what's going on, and you probably won't have an arm anymore. Number two, they basically grew up with them. It's a bit sad, but it's true. The first one, not the first thing they see, but from a very early age, they see vehicles, and they learn to ignore them because they cannot eat them. They don't hunt them. We don't hunt them. For them, it's like part of the environment, like a rock or a tree, or they don't attack trees either. All right, we are moving, but I don't have a clear answer. But basically, I think they have learned that it's not interesting. But if we step out of the vehicle, and they will realize immediately that it's a human or maybe a food source. I have not tried, obviously, but they say that during the day, even if you step out of the vehicle during the day, the lion will most probably run off because it knows it's at disadvantage during the day. In the evening, when it starts getting dark, it knows it has an advantage. So it's much more dangerous to step out of the vehicle during the dark hours, so to speak. But it's the same. We sleep in tents. The lion can come straight up to the tents. They're not trying to get in. They're not going to rip up the tent, which they can do easily in some places. They're not going to do it because they don't really understand in some way. That's how it is. We had on one trip. I had two American ladies with me, and she came in the morning and she looked half dead. And I said, "What's going on? I haven't slept anything all night." How come? I had a buffalo leaning on the tent, so you have like a bulge into the tent, and snoring, she said. So she couldn't sleep all night. For a lady. But these are part of the experiences. But if you follow, many people think it's dangerous and so on, but if you just follow the simple rules that they have, it's not more dangerous than anything else you do in life. I mean, you drive the car every day. It's more people die from car accidents every year than lion attacks, that's for sure. So yeah, accidents do happen, but most of the time when people are being stupid.
If they start building sense and they get to know these things, I mean, tough luck, yeah, then. If you're in accident.
Yeah, but animals in general have a fear for people. You know, once I was in Kenya and we hear a lion roaring not far away from us, and we were eating dinner, and two local people, Maasai people who works in the camps and they act like guards and so on, they just ran out in the dark with wooden clubs and chased away the lion. They probably just shouting and making noises and stuff like that, and the lion gets scared and run away. I have many stories about this. I can keep on forever. In the Kalahari, once we saw a person, he stopped, he went out of the vehicle, which you're not supposed to, but he had a puncture. And we said, "Do you need help?" No, I managed. Okay. 50 meters further up the road, there is a big male lion under a tree, just looking at this guy, what he's doing. He could easily have, if he wanted to, just attacked, but they don't want to. They're not interested in us if we're not being stupid. So, but I'm more worried about other things when I'm there, like scorpions and snakes and these kind of things. But again, there are rules. Don't walk at night when you don't see. Don't walk away from the ramps, the wooden ramps that they've built. Don't have open toe shoes. You know, these kind of simple rules. And a torch. Always have a torch when it's dark, so you see where you step, what you're stepping on, and where you're walking, and you're fine. Anyone else?
Any more questions?
Everyone is happy, Johan.
Everyone is happy?
Good.
Okay.
May I tell you, Johan, that today there were nearly 50 people following your 39 here and 7 on our Facebook page, which was streamed live.
Great.
Very good. Very good attendance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think we can conclude here. Thank you so much, Johan, for sharing your experience with us. I think if you do another interesting adventure, we would like to know about it as well, because it was really interesting. Thank you everyone who joined our webinar. Again, we remind you next week that we will be having the photo mentoring discussion, and don't forget to send us your photos. Thank you all. Have a nice week and keep safe. Thank you.
Thank you.